So please excuse me if I repeat something that Mary or Betty Ann said while I was away. I heard wonderful things about both of their services and the leadership that they gave. So they've may have already covered this, but I just want to remind us that people and groups here at St. Aidan's have been preparing these booklets. And some folks are saying, wow, I'm getting tired of doing something every day. And when are we going to be finished doing something every day? And I just want to make sure that people know that it is actually a centuries-old practice that Christians do something every day. So it's become unusual for some people, although for many people it is not at all unusual to sit and to have a quiet time and to take time to reflect on something that is inspirational, something that provides a larger lens upon which to look at the day that is upcoming before them. So I'm excited that there are many groups who actually are looking forward to producing a booklet, a 36-day guide, and those of us who are willing will be able to just pick it up and take it home and work with it and review and listen to ourselves about what it is that pops up for us in our own spiritual journey. The booklet that we're doing right now, which I'm sure has been well introduced, is this booklet on belonging. Now, you'll perhaps know this, but how many went through a confirmation class? Right? So it was pretty traditional in the church, especially the United Church and some of the mainline churches, that there would be something from probably 8 weeks to 2 years. If you were a Lutheran, you studied it weekly for 2 years. And you did this confirmation study, which gave you, or hoped to give you, a real solid background and introduction to Christianity, to the key things about Christianity. Now, we're not doing confirmation so much. It was always confirmation of our baptism vows, which is where the confirmation word came from. But we're not doing that so much because people learn differently. People get a sense of not needing to know so much. They say, if I love God, and if I'm learning to love like Jesus, why do I need to have all this knowledge poured in? And membership has kind of, it's a difficult word because it's quite institutional. So this is the worship committee's attempt, and I think it's an excellent one, to kind of meld some of these past traditions, the tradition of confirmation, the tradition of membership, and to say, you know what, nowadays what we're looking for is a sense of belonging. Nowadays, we want to find a place where it feels like we can be ourselves. A non-judgmental community where we belong. It is a yearning, a longing that people have now. That they can just be, that they will be accepted, compassion shared with them, understanding, and help for their living. So our program this year is called Belonging. And instead of confirmation on Pentecost Sunday, that's May 20th, we're going to have a ritual of belonging. And so that's what we're working on. But you know what? It's hard to let go of the past. And, see, God agrees with that. It's hard to let go of the past. So we've provided this so that there is some information, and not only information, but some kind of calling forth from you things that you already know. So I really recommend this, and I've been enjoying it in between doing the things that I had to be busy with. So Mary did an introduction to it, and Betty Ann talked about God and Jesus and the Spirit, and today I'm to talk about church. No, I'm not to talk about church. Wrong sermon. I'm to talk about the Bible, because the Bible is one of those things that's pretty central to the Christian journey, but as sometimes happens, it kind of gets set aside. And so many couples that I marry now, and we say to them, do you want to pick a Bible passage to be read at your wedding? They say, I don't have a Bible. You know, if they're willing, they'll download an app of the Bible onto one of their devices. But the Bible has become controversial and kind of overlooked. So, what do we want to say about the Bible today? I think the Bible, there's been 4 big chapters in the history of our relationship to the Bible. In the very early days, the Bible was kind of the purview of people who could read and the church leaders. For the first 2 or 3 centuries, it took time to decide what was going to be in the Bible. What writings would be in the Bible. This is the first 2 or 3 centuries of after Jesus. The same process happened with the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible as we now refer to it. And it took a long time for church leaders to say, these feel like authentic, connected writings, and so let's let them into the Bible. And then around 350, it was called the Canon of Scripture, and it was closed. Nothing new was to be added. And so from about 350 to 2000, we have spent our time trying to understand what was in, what those readings mean, and how they apply to our lives. So in that very early days, the Bible really belonged to the church leaders and to those who could read. And that happened, continued for quite a few centuries, because reading was not nearly as desired a skill or available skill as putting food on the table. But then the printing press happened, and the Protestant Reformation happened. And in the Protestant Reformation, one of the basic things that was desired and fought for was that the Bible would be translated from the scholarly languages into the vernacular languages. And suddenly, the Bible was available. And the printing press meant that many people could read the Bible in their own language. And that was a huge democratization of the Bible. And so people then didn't have to listen to what the priest thought it said. They could go to the source. And there was a great energy for reading the Bible for quite a few centuries. But then in the early 1900s, people said, I think just some of the words that are on the page and the ways that it's written, well, I'm not sure that's what Jesus intended. And so there was a movement in the 1900s that started people looking at the scriptures much more critically, saying, it's not enough just to read that story and apply it literally to today. This story needs to be interpreted and understood for what it meant in Jesus' day, so that we actually understand what Jesus' point was, and we'll make the application to today. Well, we went quite a distance with interpretation in the United Church of Canada, and the Methodist Church and Presbyterian churches were all churches that said, you know what? Having a critical approach to understanding the Bible and its writings and its teaching is essential. And I agree with that. But one of the things that happened was we kind of came full circle. Because then it was, if people didn't have the tools or didn't study to get the tools, they didn't know how to interpret it. And so they'd say, well, what's the point of reading the Bible if actually I'm not going to be able to understand it without having studied or read a lot more about these tools for analyzing? And so the readership of the Bible got smaller and smaller. Because again, people didn't feel that it was our book. Didn't feel like they could open it and read. And so one of the things that happened here in this congregation, I think that's the chapter that we're in right now, is people aren't sure of the value of the Bible. They aren't sure, they don't have the tools and feel confident that they can interpret it. So what is the use? And it's just a book of old stories. And some of it's not very good. So today, it's kind of gathers dust on many people's shelves, or it's one of the books that gets downsized. Well, what do I want to say today to you about the Bible? Fred Buechner says that one way to describe the Bible is it's written by many different people over a period of 3,000 years and more. Another way would be to say that it's a disorderly collection of 60-odd books, which are often tedious, barbaric, obscure, and teem with contradictions and inconsistencies. It is a swarming compost of a book, an Irish stew of poetry and propaganda, law and legalism, myth and mirth, history and hysteria. Over the centuries, it has become hopelessly associated with Bible-thumping evangelism, with dreary piety, with superannuated superstition, and blue-nosed moralizing, with ecclesiastical authoritarianism and crippling literalism. Let them who try to start out at Genesis and work their ways conscientiously to Revelation beware. That might describe why the readership of the Bible has reduced. And there's other reasons. And I know all those things, and I think you also, many of you, know all those things. The contradictory stories, the story that is told one way here and is told another way here with a quite different point. And along the way, we got it tied up with saying that this is the inspired word and it has to be taken literally. And there's just things in it that we don't want to take literal. I particularly don't want to take literally, if your right hand offends you, cut it off. I like my right hand even though I'm left-handed. You know, I find it handy. So, all those things, I believe that Buechner says to critique the Bible are true. But I think there's another side. I think that the Bible has been a source of comfort and strengthening for people for millennial. It has been a place where folks could go and could see a different way of living. That something good in people could be called out. So I think for all the ways that it has sometimes been challenging for people, it has in almost equal measure or greater measure been a comfort and something that has called forth their best selves. And much of the progress in Western civilization has been because people caught a vision of what the kingdom of God could be like as it was talked about in the Bible. And they wanted to build that. So it was aspirational. But I think the thing I like most about the Bible is that it's really a book about life. You know, when I was naive and just getting started and I hadn't read anything in the Bible very much. I was new to faith. There was this cute little phrase that somebody said, if you reading the Bible will keep you from sin, or sin will stop you from reading the Bible. Have you heard that? That it was, anyway, it doesn't matter who. But it was that reading the Bible will keep you from sin, or sin will keep you from reading the Bible. And I wrote that in the front of one of my Bibles because I had lots of room for improvement in my life. And then I read the Bible. Wow. The things that the people in the Bible got up to was amazing to me. And they got into the Bible doing all kinds of things that our pietistic view of Christianity had said people didn't do. You know, and so even the first, within a few chapters of the beginning of the Bible, if that's as far as you got, you encountered people who drank to excess, people who were engaged in incest, people who killed their brothers, people who couldn't do as they were told. It didn't seem to me that it was such a very pious book and that it kept you from sin. It actually felt like a book to introduce you to sin. And I realized that the human things that still are happening in the human community were happening back there in the Bible. People were greedy in the Bible. That still resonated as true. If you didn't get caught in the details of the story from a different day and a different culture, the underlying thread of betrayal, of envy, of jealousy, of brokenness, of sabotaged relationships, of unfaithfulness as well. There's people who were tremendously faithful, people who took great risks in order to accomplish something wonderful. It was all there. It is not a book of piety. It is a book of life. And there is a story in the Bible for everyone who struggles with whatever they struggle with. You just have to find it. So, it's also a Protestant theologian by the name of Karl Barth. Many of you will know him. Some of his books are in our library. He says that reading the Bible is like looking out the window and seeing everybody on the street shading their eyes with their hands and gazing up into the sky towards something hidden from us by the roof. They're pointing up. They're speaking strange words. They're very excited. Something is happening that we can't see. And Karl Barth said, to read the Bible is to try to not see what's up there. As you look through the window, what you can see is the expressions on people's faces. You can see how the people are reacting to whatever is out there. And Karl Barth said, reading the Bible is really the act of paying attention to people who can see something that you can't see. And so don't try to always be looking up there, but be people watching. And so, as we did when we did the study of Mark, we listened to what Mark said, because we couldn't see what he had said, what he had seen. But we could see him. So, anyway, I see you all starting to gaze around. And anyway, for 21st century people, for you and I, reading the Bible is hard. You don't know, we're frustrated that no new writings can come into it. But if you want some clues about how to read it, here's a few practical ones. Don't start at the beginning and go to the end. It's really bad. Ask for recommendations about the good parts. Get a Bible that has good study notes, right? So that you can have help along the way. If you've already read the Bible 2 or 3 times and you love the King James Version, read the Bible in a different version. Because don't get stuck in one way, because otherwise the familiar words just kind of brush over us. Underline the Bible. Put stickers in the Bible. Use happy faces, sad faces, mad faces, and surprised faces. Because it's all there. Work with it. Use it as a tool for understanding what God might be up to in that day and in that culture. Well, that's enough for me today. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm interested to hear what you folks think about the Bible.